All right, so it is 12 o'clock. If we have people join later, that is lovely as well. Wanted to welcome all of you that are here to Webinars for Busy Lawyers. My name is Laura Keeler. I'm one of the law practice advisors for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, Massachusetts Law Office Management Assistance Program. It is my pleasure to be host and moderator today for our Webinars for Busy Lawyers with John Simic and Sharon Nelson. As you may know, the Webinars for Busy Lawyers is a series that Mass LoMAP puts on every month. It's to give you practical, friendly tips, so that way we understand you are constrained as a busy lawyer, and these are things you can use to implement in your practice right away. I will let the speakers introduce themselves. Before I do that, I want to note, as you have questions, please put them along in the chat. Our speakers very graciously are great at answering questions and have offered to do so. I also want to note on a personal note that I am extremely honored and delighted to have Simic and Sharon Nelson here. I am massive fans of them. They are prolific writers and podcasters and presenters. I remember the first couple times I met them, I was absolutely, oops, I'm so sorry. Having that, I was absolutely blown away because they are just titans in the industry and full of wonderful knowledge. So we're beyond delighted to have them here. And I will turn it over to John and Sharon to give a little bit more of their background and to start us into this webinar, which is so important about cybersecurity. So thank you for being with us today, and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I don't know when we've had such an enthusiastic introduction. I hope we could live up to it. Welcome, everyone.
Share the screen there.
I am Sharon Nelson. I am the president of Sensei Enterprises, which does digital forensics, managed information technology, and managed cybersecurity. John and I together have written 18 books published by the American Bar Association on those topics. And I am a former president of the Virginia State Bar. John has a whole list of certifications after his name. It goes on, and it's in all three of those areas I mentioned. And we'll take questions at any time that you might have, and we'll kind of be going, we'll be going on pretty much of a high-speed tour since we only have 30 minutes, because this is normally a 1 hour presentation, but we did cut out some of the slides, so hopefully we cut out enough. So this is what we look like. We spend a lot of time on making nice PowerPoints with good designs, not full of words more than we need to, and therefore we're always looking down at our notes, and that makes us look distracted if we show ourselves, but at least you get a sense of who we are. And let's start by giving you a very good resource. The Sedona Conference, for those of you who do not know, is a think tank. It has judges, it has lawyers, it has legal technologists and academics. They do superb work. Everything they do is your favorite price, which is to say it is free. And you'll see that this was published in July of 2020. So this does include commentary, which is inclusive of the pandemic, which is great. So these are really cybersecurity standards for small businesses, which I know most of you are. So this is a very good resource for you.
A little bit about the statistics and kind of where we are as part of the pandemic. Beasley Group published last summer stats in analyzing what's going on in the cyber world. And that first bullet up there is crazy. 750% rise in ransomware in the first 6 months of 2020. I have not seen stats for the balance of 2020. I would be surprised if that number isn't even higher for the full year of 2020. Even anecdotally, our own clients and our own experience, significant increase in attacks, of ransomware attacks, because the cyber criminals are not stupid. What do they know? Well, they know that the vast majority of people are still in a work from home environment. I mean, we're slowly coming back into businesses, slowly on a periodic basis going back into the office. But when we're in our home networks, we're sitting behind consumer grade equipment, consumer grade routers, consumer grade network, consumer grade computers. It doesn't have the security levels that the business grade actually has. And the cyber criminals also know that. They know that only 35% of people have actually changed the default Wi-Fi password for their router at home. So having known that, that's what they're attacking. As I said, ransomware has just shot up like crazy. Ransomware actually has morphed. It's changed over the last 18 months or so. And it's no longer, Sharon and I call it ransomware 2.0. It's not an official industry term. That's something we made up because the original ransomware, and we still get some of that, is what I call spray and pray. They shoot out these phishing emails, they shoot out whatever to try to infect people. And then if they get infection, they will then encrypt the contents and then hold you hostage. So what's happened though is that people are smarter. They've got backup. They just restore their data from backup and off they go. They don't have to pay. Well, the cyber criminals found this out to be not a very good business model. They were losing money. People were restoring, they weren't paying the ransoms. So what do now? They actually exfiltrate the data. They quote, steal it first. Then they encrypt your data. And then if you refuse to pay or do whatever, or even if you do pay, they'll come back with a second request, a second extortion attempt and say, if you don't give us the second ransom, we're going to sell, auction, or expose your data. Some ransom groups have gone even so far as to anonymously call the press and say, hey, so-and-so law firm has been attacked. And they'll even show you some information, some sampling of the data that they stole to prove to you that they have your data, to try to entice you to pay that extortion fee. Business email compromises as well has seen a huge increase. This is where it's financially driven, but where people are pretending to be someone that has authority to facilitate money transfers, whether that's payroll or pay invoices or do those things. And what they're doing is they're faking out. They're changing the wiring instructions. They're inserting themselves into email conversations. And right at the last minute, a real estate transaction or whatever, and they're saying, okay, instead of here, transferring the money to this bank account, here's the new routing number and information. And it looks very, very, valid. And as you see there was an increase in the first 3 months of 2020 of 75%. And then it was 200% each week during April and May. And the Internet Crime Center IC3, Internet Crime Complaint Center, published their 2020 Internet Crimes Report, which accounted for over $4.2 billion worth of fraud in 2020. And of that $4.2 billion, $1.8 billion of it was BEC, related to BEC.
So cyber criminals are pretty good at sniffing the air and figuring out where to go. So what they're doing now is attacking home networks very ferociously. Obviously, they don't want the home network. They want the law firm network. That's where the data is, and data is black gold these days. So they are doing, among other things, extensive phishing campaigns, often using vaccine subjects to get people to click on a link or attachment. The assumption, of course, is that more people will be working from home for a long time. That's where we seem to be going to a hybrid model, and that's what the majority of respondents to the various surveys have reported. The home network is 3.5 times more vulnerable and likely to have malware. Many firms happily are now extending protection to their home machines, or they're buying laptops for the firm that they're deploying to home. That is a much preferred thing, is to have the laptop fully under the control of the law firm network. And we have also seen a slow rise in cybersecurity training and phishing simulations, which are good because people forget and they need to be reminded all the time. So we've never had a time when it's more important to teach them, and they call it repetitive training because they forget so much, and you think they would remember some of these fundamentals, but in fact they do not.
Yeah, it's COVID fog.
It might be. I think they were foggy before, but in any event, we do these trainings for law firm, and we charge $500 for a 1-hour training, and at that price most law firms can afford to do it at least once a year, and of course twice is better, because you want them to remember. It's good to review your security policies because most people have old, kind of dusty policies that they haven't looked at for a while. And I always remind people there is no set it and forget it in cybersecurity. 45% of employees say that they have, in fact, caused harm to their firms. They didn't say what kind, but they caused some kind of harm. And they say it was because they were distracted or because they were perhaps going too fast. And there is a famous quote by the journalist Mitch Radcliffe that says, "A computer makes you lets you make more mistakes faster than any invention in history, with the possible exception of handguns and tequila. It's a rather strong sentence, but I think that is pretty much the way it is.
That's a bad mixture, boy.
Yeah, it sure is a bad mixture, to be sure.
So what's your friend? Encryption is your friend, and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, otherwise, is a more generic term. You probably are more familiar with the term 2FA, two-factor authentication. Two-factor is one of those, but multi-factor could be 3 or 4 different ones. So that's where things are going. But there's really a lot of confusion here, and we have to strike this balance between convenience and security. I mean, as far as security goes, we can make things really, really tight. We can lock things down. We could, have these tremendously crazy password requirements. We can make it so secure that you can't do your job. That's how good we can make it. Well, that's not any good. You need to do your job. So we have to balance security and convenience. MFA, people get really confused about that. They say, you know what? I'm not going to punch that darn code in every single time I log on. Well, you don't necessarily have to. Most systems where you implement 2FA or MFA allows you to trust the device. So you can trust it for a period of time, trust it for 2 weeks, a month. In Microsoft 365, as an example, if you enable MFA, you are trusted until you change your password on that device. And then once you change the password, because you should have periodic password changes, then you got to put the code in again. And that's not too bad to do. Now, you might have to do that a code every time for more sensitive things like, maybe your payroll, when you log in to create your payroll environment, or your 401k or something like that, you'll have to do it every time, but generally no. And why would you want to do that? Well, you want to enable MFA for everything, because in Microsoft's own research and looking at their Microsoft 365 users, enabling multi-factor authentication blocks 99.9% of account takeover attacks. So you don't get much better than that. Now, it's not 100%, but that's pretty darn close. And the good news is, as Sharon said earlier, Microsoft thinks that MFA is so important that it's now free across all subscriptions. You heard that right, free. But it's not turned on by default. So if you are a Microsoft 365 user, and thankfully more and more lawyers are becoming subscribers to Microsoft 365, if you don't have MFA turned on now, then talk to your support folks, or if you have internal support or your IT support folks, whatever, and turn that on. Enable that multi-factor authentication. We also need some sort of password policy too. Unfortunately, we're not passwordless right now. We're getting there, and at some point in the future, we will no longer require passwords, but the reality is that we have to today. So we have to make sure that we have reasonable rules. Again, we have balance that convenience versus security. If you make your password rules such that you have to have a 64-character password that changes every 3 weeks, guess what? People are going to start writing them down. And then that's not good. So, and if let's say it's not even that bad, but they'll begin to reuse passwords. And we already know that 50% of users reuse passwords. And the cyber criminals know that too.
So let's speed through ethics, because I know the substantive content is much more useful to you, but these are the big 5 of the ethics rules that apply to cybersecurity. So you can read them there yourself. 1.6, of course, is spot on. And I just want to point out to you that under rule 5.3, regarding non-lawyer assistance and your responsibility to supervise, that could apply to artificial intelligence as well as a paralegal. So think about that for a moment. So to be competent, you have to know something about cybersecurity, learn it, or get qualified help. And in point of fact, what happens in the average case is that it's some combination of all 3. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Do what you need to do. Just make sure that you are displaying a level of confidence and taking reasonable measures, because it always comes down to reasonable measures. And then you see that box at the bottom there. If you're going to have somebody help you with cybersecurity, make sure they have cybersecurity certifications. IT is not cybersecurity. Every IT person will know something about cybersecurity, but they do not have the required expertise. So check and make sure about that. And then I just want to show you a couple of the very important ethics opinions here. Let's look at the bottom first. Formal opinion 483 is your obligations after a data breach or a cyber attack. Many people are not aware of some of these obligations and have not read this opinion, so it would be wise to do so.
The thing I want to point out there as well is you also have a requirement to monitor your network activity so that you know when you've been breached.
That is correct.
That's a new one and a real shocker to a lot of lawyers.
And then the opinion up above is the ethical obligations for lawyers working remotely. A number of states have written opinions since the pandemic broke out, but Pennsylvania has one of the best opinions. So I just wanted to share that one with you. And now let's talk about ABA Formal Opinion 498. I am not going to go through this because it is just, it's a lot to talk about. And John is actually going to talk about some of the substance in other slides.
The audience is saying, thank God.
Yeah, I know. But I do want you to know it's out there, and it was just issued on March 10th of this year. So it's very, very, very important and up to date. And it's only 8 pages. So please print it out, read it, mark it up as needed, and make yourself a task list. It goes on and on about all these things. I was particularly startled to see disable IoT devices, which we in fact recommend and have seen other law firms recommend, but that was kind of unusual for us. Yes, John.
Question: as a sole practitioner, besides regular backing up my system and using Microsoft 365 2FA, what additional steps do you recommend I take to protect each of my clients' data? As you can imagine, upfront and ongoing costs are a major consideration, and that's true. Cloud-based systems, and I don't know, we'll jump out of order here. Cloud-based systems certainly are a very good place to start in the practice management systems. Using the client portals to communicate securely with clients and share documents, et cetera. If you're talking about your own internal networks and the protection, I would steer you to a product from Cisco called the Meraki, M-E-R-A-K-I. It is a combination firewall and intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system. Very, very good. It's only a few $100s for the hardware. You license the software on an annual basis. We usually do for our clients a 3-year term. That gets the cost down to around $300, low 300s each year. So that's very, very affordable. But that piece that I pointed out before in that opinion that Sharon mentioned, the ABA opinion, the intrusion prevention, intrusion detection does in fact log those environments, those events, will notify you if there is an anomaly, block those things, et cetera. But it's certainly a good bang for the buck, especially if it's so small.
It is the lowest cost solution to what you need to do that we're aware of, which is why we have deployed it in so many of our clients, and every single one of them loves it. They love the fact that it updates without them having to pay us. It's an auto update, and so the machine gets smarter and smarter without you having to pay for the privilege.
It also takes advantage of everything that goes on around the globe. So if there's an attack that's happening, a ransomware attack is an example, on coming from particular IP addresses that has particular characteristics, all of the Merakis in the world gather that data, send it off to Cisco, they aggregate it, and then if they see that, oh, shoot, we need a fix, configuration, whatever, that fix is deployed automatically to all the other devices worldwide, and you don't have to do a darn thing. We need to make sure we have secure configurations on our computer systems. That means passwords, passphrases, those kinds of things. You should not be running as an administrator on your account. It's a standard user only account. Having some sort of, if we're talking a computer, then it's some sort of a locking mechanism. If we have failed login attempts, you don't want somebody just pounding away on your using credentials, guessing passwords, et cetera. But certainly make sure that you're patching and you're updating everything. That you're updating the operating system as well as the applications. I just blogged this morning that Dell announced that they have a vulnerability within one of their update programs that has been in existence since 2009. It impacts hundreds of millions of Dell computers, and so you want to take care of that right now to make sure that you're not at risk for that. Another resource for you, and as Sharon said, this is free.
Yeah, we're gonna go through these super quickly to get to more substance. But so, these are
CISA is a place to go. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, has these pamphlets for you.
This one from the Center for Internet Security, it was published in 2019, but it was focused on telework and small office network security both. It remains, by and large, it remains a wonderful resource.
This as well is a resource that is specifically about safely using collaboration services while we're in a work from home environment. Don't be afraid that it's coming from the National Security Agency, the same agency that spies on people. This is actually giving you advice.
And SANS is a training institute. We use this for our own folks, which tells you how much we think of it. We use it constantly. So they have this marvelous work from home deployment kit, and SANS is just wonderful. They themselves got breached last year, and the first thing they did was make it public and say, let's teach other people. Let's make this a training moment, a teachable moment. And so that is part of why we like them so much, because their integrity is so strong. A very good resource.
So encryption is your friend. Encryption basically takes clear text, applies an encryption algorithm to it, scrambles it up so it becomes unreadable. And so if it is intercepted and gathered, then you're not going to be able to decode it. You then need the decryption key in order to read that information. The ABA has an opinion that speaks to that, and the Secure Client Communications, that's 477R for revised. But basically, when we're talking about encryption, there are two areas that we need to focus on. One is when data is moving, so that's in transit, such that when you're using a website as an example, HTTPS will encrypt the communication stream. And then also when it's at rest. So when it's sitting on your flash drive, your laptop, your tablet, your iPad, whatever, your phone. We need to protect that and encrypt the data there too, in case you lose it, drop it, whenever it gets stolen. Now, every year the ABA has a legal technology survey that they publish. They survey tens of thousands of lawyers. In last year's survey, they identified that 39% of lawyers use encryption when sending confidential data. That's a low number in my opinion. It is an improvement, however. It was 38% in 2019. So
not much of an improvement, 1%.
It moved 1%. The scary part is if 39% are using encryption, that means that 61% are not. I know that's math, and a lot of lawyers say, how'd you get that so fast? But disk encryption, as well. There's a lot of different software products that are out there that will facilitate disk encryption. You see some samples here, Symantec and Sophos, and et cetera. But I want to point out two that are included in the operating system. If you're a Windows 10 professional user, and you should be, not Windows 10 Home, but Windows 10 Professional, it includes Windows BitLocker, free, no charge. Heard that free word again, but it's not turned on. You have to enable it. And there are YouTube videos that are out there to help you do that. If you're an Apple user, then as part of Mac OS is FileVault 2. Just like BitLocker, it's free, but just like BitLocker, it's not enabled. You have to turn it on. So make sure that no matter which operating system you're using, you have in fact enabled encryption. Secure communications through email. These are, again, some samples and services that you can purchase in order to send encrypted messages. As I mentioned earlier, practice management systems that have portals. You can securely communicate with clients using those portals, so you might not need one of these. The one product that we recommend highly for solo and small firms that may not have, let's say, a case management portal is Proofpoint. Proofpoint is very affordable. It's only a few dollars per user per month. It's excellent tool for the solo smalls, but it scales even up to large firms. Our own bank, as an example, uses Proofpoint as their encrypted email. But as you see here, these are all different choices. If you're a Microsoft 365 user and it's not included in your subscription, you can always purchase the Azure rights on top of it. And last I checked, I think it's like $4 a month per user, something like that. So it's not overly expensive. We need to also encrypt and follow our protect our mobile devices, our tablets and our phones. The good news here is that if you have a modern day Android device or iPhone or iOS device, iPad, iPhone, just putting a lock code on that device will encrypt the contents. But make sure that it's something stronger. I'm not a real fan, frankly, of PINs. I'd rather see passwords. I know the default today on an iPhone is 6 digits. Again, I'm not a fan of the PIN. I'd rather see you change that and make it a passphrase to be on there. But You also want to make sure that you've got it configured to wipe the device after so many attempts, failed login attempts, the location services, et cetera. And also that it automatically locks after a period of inactivity. If you need to securely collaborate with folks, again, we want to make sure that we're using encrypted services to do that. The number one secure file collaboration tool outside of practice management systems, right? You can do collaboration within a practice case management system, but it's Citrix ShareFile. I think it's like 82% or whatever lawyers use Citrix ShareFile as a secure collaboration tool. But also, if you need to encrypt information and share that with your clients or opposing counsel, co-counsel, whatever, on a periodic basis, you can actually use tools that you already have. If you put a password on a PDF file, on a zip file, or on a Microsoft Office document, an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, just password lock it. It encrypts the contents of that file. You can then send that file as an attachment in your regular email. It'll stay encrypted then and protected, but do not put the password in that same email.
That would defeat the purpose entirely. I want to encourage you to actually spend more money rather than less to get business grade tech. There's a reason why the price is lower. If you buy business grade tech and you up the price, remember what your parents always told you, you get what you pay for. Well, you get, in this case with business grade, you get security, increased security, you get scalability, you get manageability, you get the thing you love most, which is speed. And because it's made with high quality parts, it will last longer by design. So laptops, desktops, servers, all should be business grade. When you buy consumer grade, you think you're saving money, but you're not, because these are less reliable machines. They are made with lower quality parts, and they are intended to have a shorter lifespan by design. So it's an investment. Get business grade tech.
Yep. Network connectivity, as well. We want to avoid using that home Wi-Fi if we can, especially if it's shared. Your spouse is working from home, your kids might be doing, remote schooling, et cetera. Primarily because you're all competing for bandwidth on that Wi-Fi. And what we find is that a lot of folks in their home networks are using older Wi-Fi equipment, probably, 4 or 5 or more years old. But if you do have to use that home Wi-Fi, and we realize that, yes, you may have to, make sure it's encrypted with WPA2 as a minimum. The new versions of Wi-Fi, WPA3 is available, so enable that. But change all the default logins, all the names, and disable any remote access and remote administration capability, because the cyber criminals know that. They know that people are working from home. They know they're using consumer Wi-Fi networks. They know that people haven't changed the passwords, and they know what to attack. Consider using the hotspot on your phone. Typically, the hotspot's going to be slower, but it isn't a secure encrypted connection between the phone and the carrier. But remember, if everyone's competing for bandwidth on your home Wi-Fi, streaming Netflix or doing whatever, or spouses in a Zoom meeting and has all that stuff going on, that hotspot might actually be faster when you think about it.
It typically is not, but in that case where there's multiple family members using it, it can be faster.
So the next generation, I use this excuse to upgrade our network with Sharon, and said, you know what, we need to get a Wi-Fi 6 network because it's going to give us some WPA3 encryption. And we put in a 3-node Euro Pro system that's a mesh network. So the coverage is like phenomenal, and the speed is phenomenal.
Mesh networks are just, trust me, if it's in your budget, you're going to love it. You're absolutely going to love it.
You're going to need potentially some form of remote access software. Again, encryption is your friend. Make sure you're using a VPN potentially. You might have to train employees. You might need additional licenses, et cetera. Depending on the size of your firm, you might want to consider other remote access products that are like more remote control as opposed to VPN. But just because you're using a VPN doesn't mean that you're 100% secure. There are vulnerabilities in virtual private networks, and some are better than others. And the cyber criminals know that, since everyone, just like you're working from home behind using consumer computers, sitting behind a consumer Wi-Fi, the cyber criminals know that you're also using a VPN. and they're attacking those VPNs. And what they're doing is they're looking for recently announced vulnerabilities. And so as an example, if you use NordVPN, and which is a good VPN, and if they announced a vulnerability, May 1st, they know they're going to attack NordVPNs because they know that over 50% of the time, they're going to run across somebody that hasn't patched it yet because they're slow to patching it.
So don't be slow to patch. That's the message.
RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, it's disabled by default. It's included within Windows, but there's a reason it's disabled by default. Larger firms will be able to use it more securely because they put other controls in place. But as a solo small, I would suggest not using RDP at all and using some other remote control solution like Log Me In, Go to My PC, some of those things, or even a product which I really like, which is called Control. It's manufactured now by ConnectWise, but much more affordable than Go to My PC or Log Me In Pro.
And just to give you a smile, this is our friend Joe Kondo preparing for a remote court hearing. And we talked a little bit about it. He was so kind, a former VSB president like me. He was very kind when he posted this on Facebook to give us permission to use this. And we talked a little bit about his upcoming hearing. And he asked me if I had any advice. And I said, Joe, whatever the heck you do, don't stand up, man. And that's kind of what it's like to practicing law these days. And that is the end of our 30 minutes. Do we have any questions, John?
No, they asked about the slides and that, so we'll have to. Did you send those to Laura?
I don't know. We do 4 or 5 of these a week. I have no clue what I've done. Laura, if I have not sent you a PDF of the slides, please ask me to do so, and that way you can distribute them. Do remember that this is, it's a scaled back 30-minute presentation of an hour, so we had to pick and choose our slides a little bit. But
that was the rocket round.
Yes, a wonderful rock around. So much great information. So to reiterate, for those who may not have seen the earlier question, yes, we will have slides and a recording to you all for who's registered by tomorrow. We'll also put this up later on the LUMAP website. I know that we had a question come in earlier, which you graciously answered. If more people have questions and you'd like to put them in the chat, we'll respond to those now as we can.
Sure.
Wanted to just highlight a few of the many things that you said that were so important. So when you talked about MFA or multi-factor authentication, for those who may be less familiar, and how it prevents 99.9% of attacks, and you also talked about encryption and some of these other things, I think that really plays into the theme of, you said it has to be security, but also convenience, because you can't do things that are too unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's example of something that is very reasonable for people to do. Do you have other suggestions like that? I know we were talking a little bit before this started, for example, about backup is always great. For example, do you have suggested ways that people could back up maybe their Microsoft 365 programs or other systems that they may not have without protecting?
Yeah, backup is extremely important. The key today with the ransomware attacks, the way they're going, is to have backups, multiple versions of backup, but as a minimum, a backup that is disconnected from the network. Because the bad guys now, once they've landed into your environment, they actually are deleting backups and or encrypting the backups that they have access to in order to force you to pay that ransom, because you won't have anything to restore. So making sure that you have something that's remote, that's on an external USB drive, even something as simple as that. Microsoft 365 does in fact back up, and it backs up to your environment. But if you want to back up email, as an example, they don't do it at a granular level. So you're going to need a third-party product in order to, let's say as an example, you come back and one of your associates says, oh geez, I deleted a message from an email message from, or a whole thread last week. Can we get that back? No, not with Microsoft. You got to restore the whole mailbox. So with third-party products, you can restore just that. So, think about that kind of granularity. Case management systems, as an example, as well, cloud-based. They back up for disaster recovery, but they're not going to be able to restore a single case file for you. That's your responsibility to take care of that. So, and a lot of them will offer, different methods for that. But I see we have a couple more questions coming in here. Laura. We got to scroll back up there. It just scrolled off the sheet on me here. Always
Yes,
understood Macs to be more secure than PCs. Is that still the case? I don't know that it's ever been the case, ever. So
what is true is that the bad guys would attack non-Macs more often because the
Yes.
market share was bigger. That is true.
Not because they're more secure.
But it's not because the Macs were more secure. And years ago, Apple took off its website the idea that you didn't need antivirus, anti-malware, all the heuristics. Their advice is now precisely what the PC advice is in terms of the protections that you need. And of course, as more people have begun to use Macs, they have attacked that particular market harder, which makes a lot of sense from the cyber criminals' point of view, because now there are more people using Macs.
So no, they're not any more secure. You have to secure them just like you do any other environment, whether it's Linux or Windows or whatever. How do you confirm that our practice management systems are secure? For example,
and just on that, whether you have Macs or PCs, this is something John and Sharon mentioned earlier about things like File Vault and BitLocker are so important to help protect your systems. Please continue on.
Let's see, how do you confirm that our practice management systems are secure? For example, using client portals, or how they save our client data, and how do you confirm?
Well, there are a number of, if you just kind of Google online reviews of case management systems, but any of the major ones do a very good job. So Clio, Rocket Matter, MyCase, Cosmolex.
Yeah, I would also suggest to do a search and go to the Legal Cloud Computing Consortium. Which is a grouping of a lot of cloud practice management people that have gotten together. Jack Newton of Clio spearheaded that organization. But on that site, they actually have a really good questionnaire kind of thing for you to do your due diligence and the kinds of things you should be asking of the cloud service providers. So I think that's a really good resource as well. Can you recommend a good secure VPN? The two that come immediately to mind that are very popular and very affordable and recommended are NordVPN.
NORD. That's probably the #1 recommendation. It's always in the top 2 or 3, no matter what. When you look at PC Magazine or something and look for the top VPNs, and that's a good thing to remember. We do that every single year when we update our PowerPoints, because they're going to actually literally test all those VPNs.
But if you recall, I said that not all VPNs, they do have vulnerabilities. NordVPN actually got hacked about 3 years ago. Their Finnish, the servers that they had in Finland were compromised, and therefore the bad guys had the secure certificates for all the Nord users. Now they very quickly reacted to that, but still, don't think you're bulletproof of that. The other one that I would recommend is another product called ExpressVPN. I would avoid any free VPN whatsoever. You should be paying for it, and you can get some that are very reasonable. Let's see here. Is using OneDrive sufficient as a backup? I mean, if it meets your needs, sure. I mean, it depends, what kind of granularity, how is it configured? I don't know the details about how your OneDrive environments have been configured. For a solo, sure, that usually works out pretty well. Configuring OneDrive and backup for multiple users in a law firm, even a small firm, 4 or 5, can be a challenge for your IT folks. What do you recommend as email backup? Again, depends on what you're backing up, what you're using. I like a product, what do they call it? They changed the name of it. It used to be called Backupify, which is a really ugly name. It's now, it's by Data. SaaS Protection, I think is what it's called. Data SaaS, SaaS, so like software as a service protection, I believe is what that's called. Let's see, do I have any other ones here that is OneDrive in a backup? Nord, okay. How concerned should we be about products based in other countries? And how can we find out where they are based? For example, I try to avoid phone apps based in Russia or China, immigration attorney with asylum clients from those countries. Yeah, I would be concerned too about some of those countries.
Yeah, it does depend on the country, and there are exceptions. I mean, for instance, Kaspersky is a security suite, and it's out of Russia. But Eugene Kaspersky has spent his entire life telling the government to pound sand. And you know,
it is banned in U.S. by U.S. government.
but he is well, he's banned for usage by government contractors and so forth, by the government itself and the military. And we believe in Kaspersky so much that we have it for protection at home, because Kaspersky Labs is known for finding vulnerabilities of almost faster than anyone, and publishing them. So, I'm not about to punish Mr. Kaspersky for the fact that he happens to be doing fine work in Russia. On the other hand, that doesn't go for a lot of other folks who I don't have a long history of. But a lot of folks use Clio, and Clio, of course, is based in Canada. Mm-hmm. Now, the only thing I would say about that is I don't want my data stored in Canada, and Clio gives you the opportunity to choose to have it stored in the United States by default, and that avoids all the cross-border issues, because I don't want my data someplace where it's not within United States borders. And that's the big thing. I don't want to fight cross-border issues because I don't understand them, which means I have to hire another attorney to represent this attorney. No, thank you.
But the reality is that a lot of these apps, and where you need to read the privacy policies, the terms of service, et cetera, they are in fact pumping data back to the manufacturer. How much data are they sucking up? It's Facebook is doing a boatload of it, right? Google sucks a lot of data. I mean, you can put restrictions and things on there, but even some of your, if you use Grammarly as an example, right, to review your documents and grammar and check for plagiarism and other references, et cetera, guess what? That data is transmitted to them. That's what they use in order to analyze it. So they have a copy of it. So, which isn't necessarily bad as long as you know that up front. And so you don't want to use some of those things, whatever. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Heard about new AI type virus protection that tracks and locks down your PC. Suspicious things are happening in your PC, taking place in traditional virus protection. Okay, I love that question. Thank you very much for teeing that up.
Now you'll never get him to shut up.
I think what you're referring to is not a replacement for antivirus. It's a new breed of security products. And I always get the acronym screwed up. EDR, endpoint detection and response.
Yep.
Products such as SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, Carbon Black. Those are examples of EDR solutions. EDR solutions, in fact, use artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at the heuristics and the activity that's going on your machine, and they will stop it. They will quarantine it. They'll even go so far as to, depending on the severity, disconnecting that device from the network to minimize future infections across the network to other things. Some are standalone. The product that we use works in conjunction, the EDR product that we distribute and give our clients and that we use works in conjunction with what's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center. So these alerts then go to human beings that actually have tools, massive tools that analyze all that data so they know how to act. Is this a false positive? Is it a false negative? Did something not trigger right? Did something quarantine that should have pulled it from the network? Things like that.
Tell them what our product is.
It's the product name is Fortify, which is actually from SentinelOne.
Mm-hmm. And we do highly recommend that. We don't have experience, of course, hands-on with every product in the world, but we can tell you what our own experience has been. And that product has been very good, and it's reasonably priced for the small firm lawyer.
You will have to go through a reseller or a partner, if you will, a SentinelOne partner in order to get it. Our experience has been with, as an example, Carbon Black and CrowdStrike, very, very good products, and they test very well, but they're very expensive.
Very expensive. And so, I mean, basically, big firms use big products. Our job is to hunt out what's reasonable for the smaller firm, which protects them as well as possible. And we've been very, very happy with the response we've seen from the clients to the SentinelOne Fortify. So that's what most solo smalls would want to take a look at, not the major products that carry hefty price tags, because you guys can't afford those hefty price
But
tags.
if you're using a managed service provider for your technology
Yeah.
needs, talk to them, find out what they have available, or even if they do have anything available in order to help do that. But it is not a replacement for antivirus solutions or other security suites. It works in conjunction with them. So,
and as a note of interest, there is bad AI and good AI. So, so as much as we have good AI trying to ferret out the bad AI keeps getting smarter, and the good AI, we have to constantly make it smarter. And, the good guys are outnumbered 100-1 by the bad guys. So we're always limping behind slightly. But I think these products do a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. You guys have been doing tremendous keeping up with all these questions coming in. I just want to note a few other things as well. Among John and Sharon's 18 books that they published, there's an annual solo and small firm legal technology guide, which is put out by the ABA. This is a fantastic book. I highly recommend everyone should check it out. This is great too, because a lot of our audience here today for Massachusetts legal professionals is solos and small firms. And it's so nice that you speak to those rather than just enterprise level. With that, wanted to ask you more. You had on one of your slides about know, learn, or then. I think the other one was about MSPs.
Get help. Get help was the third component.
Oh, get help. When would you recommend for, oh yes, I'll put the title of the book in the chat. When would you recommend for solos and small firms to know that they need to reach out for help for a qualified consultant or managed service provider? Do you have certain benchmarks you would say are good points to do that?
Well, if they're listening to something like this, and it's good, of course, always to take a cybersecurity seminar a couple times a year. If you don't understand what you're listening to, you need help. I mean, even if we're explaining it in plain English and you can't get it, you need help. If you've experienced an incident, you need help. If clients are asking you about your security and you can't answer, you need help. If you're going to go get cyber insurance and you can't answer their questions, you need help. Does that help?
Yeah, that does.
Well, that's usually what we get. We get clients that get their their insurance renewal, or maybe they're filling out something. They've got a client that wants to give the firm business, and they say, "What does this mean? What are they asking us?"
Well, it's really funny because they'll say, Sharon, I not only don't know the answer, I don't even understand the question. So we have to start from ground zero and move from there.
So somebody wants to know about when and who and when do they need cyber insurance? I think everybody should.
Cyber insurance, you certainly should explore. I think everybody should explore it. It is unfortunate that with everything, all the attacks that have been happening, especially so many successful attacks, cyber insurers are upping the premiums. And so that's a problem. But there is cyber insurance that is designed for smaller law firms. And it is risk management. It closes the gap between what you reasonably do and protecting you against the fact that you can't completely stop people from coming in, and therefore you may suffer a loss against which you need to be insured. And I know people always are happy when we share our own information, but we run a small company, basically 15 people, because we're kind of a highly certified boutique firm. But our cyber insurance rider, which is a separate rider, costs us in excess of $10,000 each year. Now you can probably get something far, far, far less because you don't do what we do for a living, but you're still going to pay what seems to you sort of a Midas-like sum. But go shop around. Sometimes there are sanctioned providers in the various states. In Virginia, it's ALPS, and ALPS has a number of reasonable policies that are designed for solo smalls, but they're not as good or as comprehensive, as much as I love ALPS, as some of the other policies are. So you have to recognize that you may be getting a thinner policy and not one of the fatter ones. So you need to know the difference, and it means you need to learn. My favorite thing is to say, find a broker you trust who understands cyber insurance, and they will guide you.
Because it is a fairly new area, relatively new in the insurance field. But certainly I think everyone needs to have it or certainly investigate it. and understand what the coverage is.
Well, and there are a lot of cases in court. Warren Buffett was asked about cyber insurance, and he said, I'm not getting involved with that. Nobody knows what it means. They write the policy so that nobody knows what it means. The only way we're going to know what the lawyers mean when they write the policies is in court, and I'm not going there.
Yeah, your mileage may vary. That's the message.
Exactly. And his prediction was right. I mean, we have court case after court case where claims have been denied. So what good does it do you to have cyber insurance if you don't actually get paid when you make a claim? Yeah,
and I will make the one comment that the big misconception among a lot of folks is that they think that their general liability coverage will handle a lot of that kind of stuff.
And it does.
And it does not, and primarily because a lot of the cyber incidents, there is no physical damage. And that's what the carrier is going to hang his hat on. And they're going to deny coverage as a result. So you're going to need really a separate rider or separate policy.
We saw a case just last week where a claim was denied because they didn't follow the exact policy for making the claim, the exact procedures, but they did in fact tell the insurance company exactly what happened and notified them, but they didn't follow the formalities. So you really have to watch stuff like that too. It's the minutia that will kill you.
Those are wonderful points. I just, as you were talking I put in the chat for those, someone had wanted to know the title of the book. I put in also the title, the Solo and Small Firm Legal Technology Guide, also put in name of their firm, which is, I will note too, it's nationally recognized, it's top notch. I love Sharon's blog, Riding the Lightning, and the Digital Forensics podcast. Jim Calloway is also one of my favorite people. Highly recommend you check these out. I did want to go back to another point on your podcast that having spoken with people in the past, they often want to know about when you said to not have it on your home network, if at all possible. You mentioned things like hotspots. What are some other suggestions you would have for people working from home, whether doing a separate login or a separate network for work? What are some of your top suggestions?
I guess you have to take a look at, what's your environment. If you can create a separate network away from, just for work as an example. And a lot of the routers today, you can have a guest network, you can have, let's say your home network, but you could also put a third one, pop a third one up there for your whenever you're connecting up to the law firm network, even using a VPN. That's the network that you would use. So that's the first area is to try to segregate the network itself. Get on Ethernet if you can. Get off the Wi-Fi and plug in directly to the Ethernet, connection. So you're not competing for that bandwidth. If you're using a home machine in order to connect back to the law firm network, certainly it needs to have its own login, not shared by the family not using that machine at all. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, so we talked in the early days about families sharing the machine that was used to log on to the law firm network. And we did that because we simply knew it was happening. And so we were trying to give the best advice we could back then. But by the time we got to ABA Tech Show this year, back in February, they were already saying, just don't let it happen. It's too dangerous. And I think it's because time had passed and they had said, okay, it's time for everybody to come up with ethical solutions. And that means no sharing of the computer.
So the one question that asked about the CISA publications, do a search for CISA. And what you're looking for is the Telework Essentials Toolkit. That's what we referred to.
Is that something too that will be linked in your slides and when we send those out?
Unfortunately, it is not linked.
Okay, that's fine. You said it's the Telework Essentials?
Telework Essentials Toolkit. Yep.
Okay, I will put that in the chat as well.
There are so many. We didn't provide any materials, right?
I don't remember. Did we provide materials for this?
It's not CLE, right?
I know it's not CLE, but did we provided the PowerPoint to you though, right?
Yes, I believe so, Rachel.
That I did. I sent it to Rachel so she can PDF it easily.
And that will be going out to attendees. No, that's fine. All right. So the CISA, the Telework Essentials podcast, you guys also noted a lot of wonderful other free resources for people to check out. Any other particular guides you would like to point to on the CISA network, on the NSA, on some of these that you think might be particularly of help for the audience?
Can I do the reverse?
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is warn them about vendor publications, because
Oh.
all the time you see, the people are offering, but you have to give them your email and blah, 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 so you've got to sign up to get it, and you get it, and it's an advertisement. Sometimes it has some valuable content in it, but it's basically intended to ensnare you. So we do not like vendors publishing that kind of stuff, because self-interest is an issue. And that's why almost everything that we ever recommend, they have no vested interest. Their entire interest is in protecting the lawyers, protecting the public, whatever. And so those are much, much, much more valuable resources. And they're not going to bother you with wanting a 10-minute call on Thursday, because you're going to get those emails if you sign up for vendor resources.
But I will say in the last, year to 2 years, CISA has really upped their game. I mean, as a government agency, they are providing some really, really excellent resources, and especially since the pandemic, some really practical stuff too.
Well, and a lot more money, and we've just observed this over the last 100 days, is a lot more money is being pumped by the president into cybersecurity, and a lot of it is going to those neutral government resources to try to help with a public-private kind of relationship, so that there's a sharing and an education going back and forth, one to the other, because the government is still trying to understand how ransomware works and why police departments and schools are, how we're having this terrible problem that seems unabated. But I don't know if you said this, John, but the ransomware, as awful as it is and how many times it hits, and particularly law firms, it's the business email compromise, which gets far more money.
More money.
Yeah, it's the big one.
It's not the number of attack, it's the amount of money.
It's the amount of money they get each time. So people do need to be wary of both of those.
And what's made BEC extremely successful are those account takeover attacks. So we don't see much spoofing of an email anymore, right? I'm purporting to be the CFO of Joe Blow company, whatever it is. They're actually in their account. They don't have MFA turned on, and they are actually in. They know the credentials, and so they're reading all of the emails. They know all the history. They know the vendors. They know that they typically get invoiced, once every 2 months or whatever for a massive amount of X. And so they generate these invoices that look like that, because they have all this, quote, insider knowledge, if you will. But the jumping point is because they're not spoofing anymore. They're actually in their account.
That's right.
And they're redirecting emails. They're doing all that stuff.
And they ask us what we can do to help, and we shake our heads, because we can't help them once they've been compromised to that extent, and somebody's in there and has all their contacts and emails. That is done. That's over. Yeah. I mean, you might be able to secure them against future attacks, but that attack has been 100% successful, and I can't make that go away.
I do want to share one thing to your point of the business email compromises, because this is so important, whether it's that or spoofing for real estate transactions, which you wisely pointed out. Something I've dealt with clients, if you receive an email that the wire instructions or something are going to change, contact the party that you have using phone numbers you already have for them. Try to confirm with the person, maybe one way to try not to get pulled in.
Well, they need a policy that encapsulates just what you said, and that is constantly reinforced. That's exactly what they do need to do. But that policy needs to be in place, and then they need to hammer it home so that there are no exceptions to the rules.
The other thing I would point out is that if you do fall subject to BEC for whatever reason, is to realize it quickly, but to report it to IC3, the Internet Crimes Complaint Center, which is a group of the FBI. Their success rate of recovery of funds, if you can get them notice within 48 hours, is like over 80% now.
It's remarkable.
It's remarkable.
And it was just a tiny fraction of that not 2 years ago. So they have upped the game tremendously. But as you can imagine, if time passes and it's in a foreign country that has no use for the United States, there's not going to be anything they can do. So you've got to do it right away. And so you can't be afraid to call people in and say, I need help. And sometimes it's the fear that keeps them from calling because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble and they're going to trigger some sort of legal requirement by making that call. But make that call anyway, first and foremost, because that's how you're likely to get the money back.
Wonderful. I noticed we're coming up on the hour. I'll just do a few more points. One, our next webinars for busy lawyers will be in June. It will be on setting boundaries, so keep an eye out for that. As noted, the recording and slides will be forthcoming after this. Want to thank John and Sharon for their tremendous expertise, and also want to thank everyone being on with us today, webinars for busy lawyers. If you have more questions about this too, you can always reach out for a law practice management consultation, where you can give independent, free advice for Massachusetts legal professionals. John and Sharon, this has been exceptional. Would you like to have closing words on this incredibly important topic? You've given us so much information, and you did a brilliant job too, I know, in really condensing down when you have so much knowledge on this topic.
I think from Hill Street Blues, be careful out there. Just be careful, because the people they move too fast. Take your hands off the keyboard. Really look at where something is coming from and whether a letter is often a domain name. Be alert to something that just doesn't ring right or make sense. Yeah, constant vigilance, constant vigilance. We're exhausted by how vigilant we have to be because, of course, given what we do for a living, we run into all this stuff all the time, and it could creep into our network. So we are very vigilant.
Excellent thoughts on that. Just wanted to note for you too, we have a number of people that are writing into the chat. Thank you so much for this program. I agree, this has been tremendous information.
Thank you.
We're very happy. Thanks for inviting us, guys. We really appreciate it, and hope everybody does stay safe out there.
Yes, will do. All right, and until next month, we look forward to seeing you then for our next webinars to busy lawyers. John and Sharon, pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Oh, I do want to note one more thing. In addition to their blog and their email and their website, which I noted on here, also check out, they do a lot of fantastic guest posts for our Mass LoMaP blog. So check that out as well. Fantastic resource. These really are the top industry experts in this, and we're so glad to have them.
Rachel, we're going to make you president of the fan club.
Laura.
Sorry. I've been chatting with Rachel back and forth because we had technical problems in the beginning.
But be happy to. So.
And say hi to Heidi for us.
Yes.
Will do. Thank you both so much. And I'll let you go. Thank you all.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.